Hey guys, it's Moonie Desvarieux, and welcome to A Good Laugh podcast.
And I'm Jess Desvarieux, co-host, and welcome to our writer's room.
Woo!
Today, let's get the woo!
Yay!
Yay, yay!
Today, we are joined by a special guest, very special guest, Anthony Farrell, who's a writer, comedian, showrunner, producer. Like, my finger was hurting with all the hyphens that I had to put behind this man's name.
Yes.
So, Anthony, welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It is incredibly nice to be here. Listen, I'm fans, so this is a good time for me.
We're so excited to have you. We're gonna give you your flowers. Let our audience know a little bit about you. Anthony is a BAFTA-winning, yes, you heard me, BAFTA-winning, Emmy-nominated writer, producer who has worked internationally for over 20 years in the industry. Anthony created the comedies Hate the Player, These Triggers, Shelved, Overlord, and The Underwoods, and The Secret Life of Boys. Anthony was the executive producer and showrunner on Run the Burbs, The Parker Andersons, and Amelia Parker. Additional writing credits include The Office. Yes, you heard me correctly, people. The Office, The Thundermans, Little Mosque. Directing credits include Son of a Critch, Overlord, and The Underwoods. The Parker Andersons, Amelia Parker, just to name a few. Anthony,
Mooney, you sound out of breath. Whew, Anthony's got a lot.
I know.
I've been doing this. I'm Danny Glover of the Canadian American TV industry.
Come on, not that old, Anthony.
I've been doing this a long time.
But we know that he prides himself as a mentor for numerous programs designed to uplift marginalized voices. Everyone, please welcome our guest, Anthony Farrell.
Hey. Thank you so much. This is you can just say it. I get more gray anytime someone reads my bio. I can just feel the age. It's like, I don't know if you ever watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, but when someone drinks from that cup and they just age real quick, anytime I hear my bio, I'm just like.
Before we dive into all those creative endeavors that Mooney just listed, we have this tradition here at A Good Laugh. We just go around and talk about our weeks and what brought us a good laugh, because we know it's a hot mess out there. So we're trying to find that joy. Mooney, you want to kick us off?
And we forgot to mention that Anthony is Canadian. So he's our neighbor, our ally, our friend. So that's an important piece to note as well. Yeah, so in terms of a good laugh, what gave me a good laugh this week? So I was out to dinner with some family members. We were rolling semi-deep, like 10 of us. And just as you know, our family is like super diverse. Like, we have all different shades, all colors of the rainbow in terms of the melanin magic. And we were walking out in New York City, and like Popo rolled up real quick. Like, you heard like right by us, and you know, the sirens, the lights, everything. And one of our aunts, Regina, goes, light-skinned people first, light-skinned people up front, real quick, get up front. Yo, I was dying. I was like, that is facts. Like we've got Uncle Warren, who is like half Jewish, half Haitian. We were like, get up there, buddy, get up there.
You're white passing, go for it.
It's the human shield. It's so important. You gotta protect the brood.
Yep. Protect the pack, the Wu-Tang style.
Yep. Yeah. But you got up front. They just like, if you go first.
Yeah, there was like a paper bag, and like the people who are lighter than the paper bag, you're up front.
Right.
Yeah. And everyone's just kind of crouching down behind them, just kind of like scooting along, just like, all right.
Oh, that's a good one, Moon. What about you, Anth? How was your week? Anything that brought you a good laugh?
I laugh a lot. So the thing that made me laugh the hardest this week, I think, was, I guess it's news. It's like the first American Pope. I guess I'm a former Catholic. I used to care about that stuff. But the thing that made me laugh about it was like, I was like, oh, is this the first American Pope? And it was. He's the first American Pope. I just see the Cardinals just being like, all right, which country needs Jesus more than ever right now?
Facts.
I was like, they are definitely targeting.
Y'all need Jesus, the highest concentration of sinners. Let's get the Pope.
Us an American Pope.
You speak their language, yeah. You can reach them.
Go talk to them. Go tell it on
the mountain. Yeah.
Tell on the mountain. Go.
Fun fact, he's actually part Haitian. his on his
Creole,
maternal line. Yeah, Creole, and they came from Saint-Domingue, but Haiti. So
really?
Give that man a 23andMe ASAP. I want to know. I want to know the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. We might be related. Hey.
Might be. That's what got me. That's what got me. I was like, because I don't remember him being on the, like, they were like, oh, here are the top 3 or 4
Right.
people.
He wasn't even on the list.
He went on the list. When
Nope.
went in, it was just like,
that's like
they came out and they're like,
that's the best type of draft, right? You're not even on the list, and here you go,
on
number
the
1
list.
draft pick. Like, boom.
He went in just like, I just want to be part of the conversation. Comes out the Pope.
Jess, what gave you a good laugh this week?
So typically in my life, what gives me the biggest laughs are my children. In particular, this week, my daughter Viv, who's 3, we call her Spice Girl because this girl, oh my God, she is rough and tumble though. Like she will try to chest bump you. She's smacking my husband's ass all the time. Like she wants to wrestle, right? Like
I love it.
she's amazing. And we try to like do a little bit of gentle / conscious parenting. And we're like, we use our words. We're not going to be physical, blah, 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 blah. And, part of that is that like we grew up in a household, like we got beat. Like,
oh yeah, there was
Moonie,
the belt with the goat buckle.
There was all types. Yes. And like, I had like those moments like we all do where you're like crying. And you're like, I'm never going to hit my kids. And, I've stuck to that so far. I've stuck to it. But this little girl, she's trying to get in my husband's face and try to like fight him. Like she like wants to wrestle. And we're like, no, Viv, you got to be gentle. And she looks at me, she frowns her brow, and then she starts marching around our kitchen island being like, I want to get hit. I want to get hit. And I was like, I think we're doing something right. This is like breaking generational trauma, right? Like, so all the time I did not want to get hit. Here's my daughter who's just screaming, talking about, I want to get hit. It was very funny.
I had a similar experience with my kids too. Like it's like, because I actually didn't get beat when I was a kid.
Really? West Indian?
I know. I think my dad got beat so much he didn't want to do it.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, I ain't gonna put you through that.
And my mom was just chill. But like I think my dad had a belt, a thick white belt that I know he wore to the disco.
Studio 54 with
it was a Studio 54 belt.
Yeah.
And he named the belt Charlie. And so what he would do is, as a threat, he'd be like, you want Charlie?
You want Charlie?
You want Charlie?
You want me to call Charlie?
Hey, I'm going to get Charlie. You want me to get Charlie?
Right, you want to deal with me or Charlie? Right.
So I told my kids this. I was telling my kids, I was like, you guys got it so nice. I mean, I'm not threatening you guys. I don't name any belts. And my son, he's hearing this and he's like, ooh, I want Charlie. And I was like, what are you?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm going through with Viv. She's talking about, why is no one beating me?
I was like, this is ridiculous.
They have it too
They're
good.
mocking my childhood.
Too good.
Too good. These kids.
So Anthony, we've just heard your bio, illustrious career. Let's go back to the beginning, right? When did you know that you wanted to pursue writing as a career?
Oh, man. There's 2 moments. I think I knew I wanted to do it, or I thought I was good at it when I was a little kid. Like, we used to do these things where you'd have to do a speech in front of the class. And if your speech was good, then you get to go down to the gym and do it for the whole school. And then if your speech was good there, you get to go do it for a bunch of other schools. So even like from grade 4, grade 5, I was always the kid who wanted to go down to the gym and then do my speech. My speeches were like funny and silly. One year I did a speech on like, my Saturday night, 8:00, I'm watching the Golden Girls. And they had a little remote control. It was like, and then my parents think I'm asleep, but I'm downstairs watching Saturday Night Live. Like, it's just like, I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I think I'm a little bit of a performer. And then through high school, I did theater, but my parents are both accountants. I was very good at math. My plan was to become a math and drama teacher. So I went to university. I did theater and math. That was my double major. After my 3rd year at university, one of my theater professors said, come and act for my regional theater. So I was in Vermont doing summer stock theater. And the other actors were all like a lot of Broadway professionals. So I was like getting money. I was like making money doing something I love, doing theater. And I remember being like, oh my God, like these people are like, this is their job. Like this is like, they're making a living doing this thing. And my mom came down, she watched one of the plays. And afterwards she was like, so you're doing this, huh? And I went, I think so. And she went, And that grunt, that's when I knew, oh, I'm going for it. Cause it wasn't like a, what wrong with you? It wasn't like a,
oh, wow.
She was giving her blessing.
It was immigrant blessing. It was like,
Right.
That's all she does. When she went, I was like, oh, a door opened. So then I started focusing on theater, acting, doing comedy. I went to comedy school. I did a year
Oh,
of school after I finished. I had an undergrad in a major in theater and a minor in math because I stopped doing math after the third year. And then I went to Humber Comedy School, and that was an interesting place. It was interesting because it was the second year of the program, and it was in Toronto. And the idea of the program, it's in an accredited college. So people are there doing nursing, they're doing accounting, and then there was a comedy writing and performance class. It was so great. Like we were at the cafeteria just cracking up and making jokes and doing stupid things. And people are like, we're trying to study for our exams. A year of stand-up, improv, sketch. We had clown class. We had a shtick class, physical comedy. We were learning how to write sitcoms and jokes and features and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was like a fun year. And then after that, that's when my wife and I, we got married, and then we moved to Atlanta. So through that process, I was like learning and figuring it out and kind of realizing, oh, there are people ahead of me who are actually doing this for real. And then that's when I was like, all right, I'm gonna figure out a way to make this a living.
I love that you had that level of commitment. But did you ever waver? Were you ever like, is this artistic path really worth it? Like, am I gonna make it? Like, were there any doubts along the way?
I mean, there's always like, you always get into your head about like whether it's gonna work out or not. But the thing that I was always practical about was I was always in a place where I was making money somehow. But in school, I was always doing jobs. I worked like a bunch of different jobs during school just to like, pay for different things. And then once I got out of school, I was like, okay, whatever, I gotta get a gig. So moved to Atlanta, found a gig that was a day gig, and then I would work during the day, and then I would do stand-up or do improv or do theater, something else at night. There was a time when I was in Atlanta, my wife and I both had day jobs, and we had a second job at the Barnes and Noble, the Georgia Tech Barnes and Noble. So we were saving money because we wanted to move to LA. So she had a day job she was at the Biltmore. I was at Atlanta Gaslight, just doing like, I was just doing like facilities. I was answering phones. I was writing up reports, whatever they needed me to do. Would go work, Barnes and Noble, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours a week. And then there was a little while where I was doing 3 jobs because I was in a play at the same time I was getting paid to be, it was like an equity show. So I was doing Atlanta Gaslight, Barnes and Noble, and in a play all at the same time. Like, that Jamaican family on in Living Color.
Hey, yeah, man. I had 5 jobs. We got 5 jobs. We came in from my last shift.
That's my life. That's just like. So I've always been that person who I'm taking care of business that way first. I want to make sure that I have money to live, and I always tell people like this starving artist situation is not a good way to, because. Yeah, if you can't focus on your creativity, on your things, if you're worried about where your next meal is going to come 100%. From, right? So I was always the kind of person that was like, figure out life, and then you can add on to it. And then once I got to a place where I was like able to turn my play into work and then make it my living, then it was like, okay, cool, let's go. But even then, it's a gig economy, right? So there are times, it's funny, there's a Business Insider article that I did once where I talked about how after I had worked on The Office, a few years later, I was like, you know what? Like, things are kind of dry right now. I'm going to go work at Macy's until I can figure this out. I was like folding clothes at Macy's, just like, down the street from where I was, we had bought a house. I was like, this mortgage is not going to stop coming every month. Until I get that next gig, which was taking a while to happen. So I was like, I was teaching for Kaplan. I was doing SAT prep.
Wow.
I was doing, but I'm just one of those people that I'm like, I don't have an ego about that sort of stuff. I'm happy to, like, wherever I need to get money from to pay for things, that's okay. And I'm lucky I haven't had to go back to a day gig kind of thing like that. It's been 12 years now.
Amazing. And you won't.
And I will say that that's so encouraging for anyone who's an emerging artist, right? Like, I think people think it's like all or nothing. It's like sometimes you got to juggle a lot of balls and, make sure that you're being fed and your family's being taken care of, and you're going to have to burn burn the candles on both ends. Like, it just kind of works out that way. Like Moonie and I, we wake up super early. We're at 5:30 to 7:30 writing daily.
Ugh, it sucks. I'm not a morning person and she is, but it's like the dream keeps me going.
And I have children and I can't do the evenings, right? They come home from school, they need my attention. So we got to make it work. And I think that's the whole thing. I think people always feel like it has to be all or nothing. Like, I got to have a Jerry Maguire moment and just quit my job and this and the third. But you can do both. And it's not going to be easy, but it's possible. And until you make that transition into making your passion your full-time gig. Thanks for sharing that, Anthony.
Yeah, of course.
So just curious, like, what would you consider your big break as a writer?
I mean, I think the big break was getting a job writing on The Office. That was the one that kind of like, and still to this day, like it gets me into rooms just to say I wrote on that show for 2 seasons, right? Like I think that was the big break. And I think people are like, that break didn't just, it wasn't like, hey, all of a sudden you're on The Office, but like it took a lot of work. It took a lot of hustle. It took a lot of,
how did it come about?
Everything. So 2004, we moved out to LA after working all them jobs in Atlanta. And from there, like when I got to LA, my thing was, I don't know how I'm gonna get on, but I'm gonna get on. Like, so I did stand up, I did improv, I went to the Groundlings. I passed every single level of the Groundlings on the first try. I was waiting for the last level because there was such a long lineup. I was just like, well, I guess I got to keep on doing other things while I'm waiting. So I was doing that. I was part of a theater company. I started a sketch troupe that the theater company let me use the space. So me and my friends, we did this sketch troupe called The Audacity, and we just did all kinds of racy sketches. So it was a lot of fun. And I had written a short play that we produced at the theater that one of my friends was like, oh, this is a good, you should write for TV. I was like, well, don't just say it. Like, how does that happen? He introduced me to his manager, his literary manager, who is still my literary manager today. You guys met her, Cherie Guitar. So she ran this workshop where she was a writer herself. So she ran this workshop where you bring in a script, have it cold read by actors would leave, and then the writers would work on each other's scripts. And so I was like in a writer's room every Saturday at Zach's Italian Cafe, just every Saturday from like 11 to 4, 11 to 5, working on stuff. And through that process, she would pick up writers to represent. And then the scripts that you worked on in there would become your samples, and you would send them out. Once she picked me up, I started meeting more executives, started getting submitted for different getting submitted for different programs. I ended up in the Fox Diversity program where they optioned one of your scripts and they put you in the writers boot camp in Santa Monica. I got into the NBC showcase where you write a sketch and then the director works with you, and then the scene gets put on for like a bunch of executives and producers. And that showcase, one of the writers from The Office in season 3, Caroline Williams, she was a staff writer. They sent her to watch the show. And then she found me afterwards and she was like, I really loved your sketch. I'm going to tell Greg that he should look at your stuff. And this is where, people always talk about like when preparation meets opportunity. So at this point now, having worked with Cherie, I had 6 written samples. I had 3 original pilots and I had 3 spec scripts by the time Greg Daniels came calling, to the point like he would read stuff and be like, oh, this is great. And then he would want to read, he read like I think he read all of my scripts. But thankfully, like the preparation of all those scripts and how like I wanted to do comedy, but the things about the scripts were I had a spec of 2.5 Men, which is a multicam show. I had a spec of Arrested Development, single cam, much funnier, faster paced, and I had a spec of My Name Is Earl, which is kind of like a hybrid thing. So I had all these samples, all these things. They're very different. They're all funny. Mm-hmm. And then when you read one, you read something else, you're like, oh, this guy, if he can do all these different things, if I put my characters in this person's hands, I'll be comfortable.
Okay, so you enter that room first day at the office. The show's already doing well, right? How do you feel when you're sitting at that table in the writer's room?
So why it was big props to the writers in that room, because I know a lot of people who go into the situations and the rooms are cold and they tell you not to speak and not to. This room was very warm. Hugs, welcome to the team. Like, it was nice that when I actually met Greg, one of the first things he did after we talked, he was like, oh, you should meet the other writers. To the point where I was like, I thought to myself, oh, I definitely have the job, even though it took like 3 or 4 more weeks before I actually got the job and I almost didn't get the job. But he lets you meet the other writers. So there was already a little bit of familiarity when I started working on the show. And they were all just like, like, they just wanted the best show possible. So one of the first things that Greg told me was like, you're one of the writers here. Like, you don't have to, like, if you have an idea, say it. Like, you're part of the team. I'm an island boy. So you don't have to give me a second invitation to come in. You know what I mean? Like I don't.
You come with your Tupperware.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I'm like a vampire. Once you invite me to the house, I'm good. Like, so once I got that green light, I was like, all right, let's go. And then it was great. You learn how to, and also from working with Cherie in those rooms, I learned how to pitch, to develop story. I was good with all those things because I had practiced it and worked on it. And, one of the things I always tell people, like, if you want to get better at those things, it's not just about working on it in your own writing, but it's about learning how to critique other people's writing. I got at learning how to critique other people's writing, the better I was at writing my own stuff, because then I'd start using those critiques on myself.
So let's paint a picture of what that room is like in terms of diversity, in terms of diversity of voices, in terms of numbers. Like, was it intimidating? Like, how did it feel? Like, let's get a little deeper.
I think it's intimidating. I'll tell you this, it should be intimidating. I've done a lot, and even then I was 30 when I got the job, so I just had my first kid. I have done a lot of plays. I've done a lot of theater. I've done a lot of stand up. I was battle tested. So when I got to the room, I knew at that point, I know how to make people like me. I know what to do to make people feel comfortable around me. And I was still learning how to do that with these specific people. But because I had honed all those skills through 30 years of life, it didn't feel as daunting as it could, right? It's true, because it's one of those things where, especially like getting to a place where you could be in that room to have that interview, you have to have done enough to give yourself confidence to feel like, oh, you know what? Like, no, I'm funny. I know I'm funny. I've done sketch. I have heard the laughter from people in rooms. I know that if you give me some time, I will come up with something funny to put on paper and to I was confident in my abilities as a comedic writer, right? So I knew my worth. So now it's about like, can I convince these other people who've been here longer than me that, that's my worth. And I think part of that situation is like also learning that it's not your show. Like, for instance, as a showrunner now, like when I'm working with writers who like they pitch me things, and as a showrunner, I'm responsible for the output. I get input from everywhere, but I decide what the output's going to be. And the same thing with like Greg when we were like doing The Office. Like, I can pitch all the things I wanted to pitch. Doesn't mean they're all going to get in. Doesn't mean like anything are going to get in, because Greg is responsible for what goes out into the world after getting information from all these different places, right? So it's what he thinks is best for the show. So learning how to accept that, learning how to move past that, not take it personal, not have an ego about these things. I think that will help your longevity as someone who works in this business.
I love that. Is there a scene or an episode you're most proud of?
Man, there's a lot. So the two episodes that I wrote that have my name, and this is one of those things when you're writing an episode, you write the first draft, and then what it becomes is everyone works on whatever it becomes. So everyone works together to pitch the idea and to develop it and figure out what the beats are. One person will then take it, write the outline, write the script, and then it goes back to the team. And so I have my hands on other people's scripts, and everyone has their hands on my scripts. But for the scripts that I wrote two specific episodes. One where Michael he breaks up with Holly, and it's like they're on a drive from Scranton to Nashua, and Daryl's in the car with them, and the life is a highway and all that stuff. So I'm very proud of that episode. And then the other episode that I did was the Casual Friday episode where Meredith takes off her top, and there's, it was a close set. I'll just shout out to Kate, who was like, she's one of the funniest people.
Intimacy coordinators.
Yes, absolutely. It was one of those things where it was like, it was funny because it wasn't my pitch, but it was in my episode. It was also the episode where like Kevin drops the chili all over the floor. And like, everyone's always talking about Kevin's chili. I have a tenuous relationship with that scene. It's everywhere. People love it. People are like, oh, your episode, Kevin's chili. I found out that I wasn't coming back for season 6 right before we shot that scene. It was like one of those things where it was like, they were cutting a bunch of writers, like me, Ryan Coe, Paul Feig, and Lester Lewis. Like, you're cutting me and Paul, like, you're cutting Paul Feig. I don't feel so bad.
Like, you, like, what?
Yeah, man. It's like, I don't feel so bad. Like, this is definitely a money situation and not a talent situation. They were really good about giving me references and helped me find future jobs, and it was great. But right before that scene, it was like, hey, Anthony, you're not coming back for season 6. And I was like, what? And then they're like, hey, let's shoot this Kevin's chili scene. And I'm like, all right, great. And then every time it comes back up, which is, I don't know, once a week, people are like, remember Kevin's chili? And I'm like, yeah, I remember it. I remember it very well.
So what were some of like the major lessons, major takeaways from your time there, like both personally and professionally?
Personally, it was one of those situations. I just, like, literally 3 weeks before I started working on The Office, my daughter was born. So it was about learning life-work balance. Because when you're working on a show like that, especially during season 5, when she was like a little bit older, like around a year, it was busy. It was like heavy night work because we were in situations where Steve was about to go shoot a movie. So we were shooting like 19, 20 episodes in a row. We had the strike situation in between there as well. Like, there was a lot of stuff going on. So learning how to balance like life stuff and work stuff, that was that was a challenge that first little while, but it was also because I really loved being around my daughter. Yeah, you figure out ways to make the time that you have really, really worth it and really, really work, right? So that was really good to personally, and then professionally, it was again that stuff about like not having an ego, but also learning about how good shows are run, how good shows are working. Like that show, there are a lot of shows that don't have the vibe that set had. And I think it's one of those things I tell people all the time, like because Greg Daniels and Steve Carell were so humble and so nice, you're not at the top, like you don't have like, so I always tell people like the vibe for a set comes from the top down. So when I run a training, I remind people like if you want a space that is collaborative and giving, you have to be that. It's not going to happen if you aren't that. So whatever vibe you want to create, it's got to come from you as the showrunner. And that's one of the biggest takeaways I had from that show. And I, also on top of like also just like working with such great comedic minds and just learning a lot from all those people, like that show spawned some, like even just like Mike Shore, Mindy Kaling, BJ Novak, like Justin Spitzer, who's doing St. Dennis Medical now, who did Superstore. Like there's Gene and Lee, and there's like so many people who worked on that show. Like everyone I worked on that show, like everyone's been like doing amazing things. You have to get better to be a part of that. And also it gives you a sense of like, oh, I belong, because someone thinks I belong with these people. And that person gives you the, made me feel like, oh, if I belong with these people, then yeah, I guess I'm doing something right. I got to keep it moving. I got to keep it pushing, not slow down and give up, but just keep on moving in the right direction. So
there was a little imposter syndrome in the beginning, maybe?
It's just so funny. I tell people all the time, the imposter syndrome doesn't go away. Like I still have it now. Like there are times when, like, yeah, then even like, because for instance, like you said all those nice, like the BAFTA winner, Emmy nominated, but there's still times when I'm kind of in a place where I'm like, well, like we want to give you this award, or like I got an award for the Sandy Ross Award last year from ACTRA, which is like the SAG people up here. ACTRA Toronto gave me an award for diversity and inclusivity and those things. And I was like, first, like they told me they want to give, it's like, oh, I feel like there's a bunch of other people that you can give this to. Oh. But even stuff like that, when they first approached me, I was like, nah, you guys, there's got to be. So the imposter syndrome doesn't go away.
That's so interesting, Anthony. I like all of the success that you've reached, but don't you feel like you've earned it at this point? Like you've really done the work?
Yes, I do. But I think there's always that part of you that's like, I think this is also another thing where it's like, maybe it's an immigrant situation too, where like, how much are you allowed to say out loud? Like, you know what I mean? How much do you feel comfortable boasting about that stuff, right? I feel like
Haitian people are very boastful, so we got no problems.
And mediocre white men. So you like, you need to bring that kind of energy, Anthony.
Bring that flag.
I feel like I can do that when it's like, I feel like I have like, I'll bring my mom and my aunt to, like whenever I need that, I'll just bring them with me wherever I go. It's like, watch out, money coming true. Like, whatever whatever you need that, you can always hang with the fam. But they'll also be there to knock you down too, like, oh, don't forget. It's funny because this imposter syndrome is the kind of thing that I'm always trying to convince other people they shouldn't worry about. But I'll honest people, it's not going to go away. But it's important for you to recognize it and push past it, because you're right. Like with the Sandy Ross thing, like I was like, oh, at first I was like, this has got to be I don't know. And then it was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I have put in the work. I have done these things. The art, like, I am helping people. So I will accept the award, and I'm very thankful for it, right? And I think it's about also like honoring the people that have said you're worthy, right? So like being like, okay, I'm going to show my gratitude by accepting this award and thanking you, and also, continuing to be the person who deserves an award like that, right? I'm not the only one. I see it in people who are even like more established than myself. I see them kind of being like, oh, well, you don't want me, you want this person. Like, no, I want you. Like, you're the person we need. It's like, I feel like there's so many other people. It's like, no, you're the person. And I think this also comes down to being an artist, because I feel like so many artists start their journey from a place of insecurity. You know what I mean? A place of like, I want someone to see me. I need to express myself in a way that people can see something that I want them to see, right? And so that's why when I work with artists, when I'm a showrunner, I'm working with writers or actors, or I always am trying to be as empathetic as possible, because I know that sometimes you're coming from, regardless of like, some actors walk around like, oh yeah, I got this, whatever. And I'm like, no, there's something like, you started this because you felt like you weren't enough. You know what I mean? and you want it to be. So I understand that that's a part of who we are just in general as artists. And so I think that imposter situation, like I think it's in more of us than we're willing to admit. And I think knowing that, being empathetic of it, and also giving people their flowers and letting them know like you are worthy of the accolades, I think that all helps to uplift each other and build each other up. And I think it's important. And that's one of the things another thing I tell showrunners when I'm training them, and something I do when I'm running my shows, is appreciation is free, right? Just saying thank you, like just saying to the crew, to the actors, to whoever. And even if it's not a free, even if it's like something small, like sometimes I get like a coffee truck and just be like, hey, I see y'all out here working. Thank you so much. Those are the things that you don't realize people don't get thanked as much as they should, especially in this industry. They don't. So to me, when I thank somebody and they're like, me? I'm like, yeah, you, thank you. I see you. Yeah. I always try to be appreciative and thankful. And I think that's another thing that will help.
And we're so appreciative of you. Like, we're working together, and Jess and I always talk about how grateful we are to have you as a mentor, for you to believe in us and see our vision and want to come and play with us in our sandbox. And we're just so grateful and humbled and so appreciative that you see that in us, and I want to be a part of that and want to help guide us to our destination.
Well, y'all are talented. And anytime I can find talented people to make some money off of, I'm always happy.
Oh my God, I love it. Oh, it's so good. So good. So good.
No, it's great. You guys are fantastic. And it's one of those things where, and again, it's like you never know where you're going to, our friend Kashmir kind of connected us. And it's like one of those things where you never know where you're going to see someone be like, oh, that's different. That's interesting. That deserves more spotlight.
Thank you.
Just piggybacking on that tone, do you feel like that's your North Star, Anthony? Like that you're under it all? Like that's a big thing for you, is diversity and inclusion in the industry? Like what's kind of pushing you? Like the bigger why?
Yeah, like I feel like, especially being in the Canadian industry, like since moving back in 2017, I feel like there was a lot of fake inclusivity where they're like, look at all this inclusivity. And then you look behind the scenes, you're like, everyone in the back who's making the actual money is just white people. You're like, oh, you found a way to monetize the inclusivity, and this is what's happening. And the people who actually look different are not the ones who are actually raking in the funds like the other people are, right? So I'm always trying to figure out ways to uplift and to try and find ways to not just bring people in, but bring them in where they're in they're in positions of power, where they can actually affect change, right? Because I think one of the things about having a showrunner who's diverse, their writers' rooms will be more diverse because they're more interested in trying to opening up those doors for people who have been marginalized, right? And I think it's because for people like me who have gotten to this level, like it didn't happen because we were like, someone gave it to us. Like as you can tell from that story, it's like I put in a lot of work. Like I did a lot of work to get where I am, and I know that it takes that kind of work. So when I see it in other people, I want to make sure that they find ways to get their flowers. I find ways to help them get their flowers, right? So I think it's a big thing. I think it's one of those things people are always kind of like, you see the death of DEI now with like Trump being back in power and stuff like that. You're just kind of like, oh, people are just the people who are in power who are like white men are like, oh, we're losing all these things. I'm like, are you though? Because you still got a lot of money, a lot of power. There's still a lot of stuff that's happening where I'm like, oh, we're watching a television show where like, look, listen, I'll watch all those shows. I'm watching Andor right now. Love Andor. I don't know how many of the writers in that room are people of color. I don't think any of them are. Like, so don't tell me that you're like, that's like a show that probably costs $1 kajillion to make. I don't think there's any people of color writing in that room, right? So I still love the show, but it's also like, don't say that you're losing out. Like that's not what's happening. So all these things where they're like trying to shut things down and just like stop. It's just like this fake narrative being written by people who are in power just so that they can give their friends.
We've talked so much about, like, you mentioned like the show running, right? Like maybe if we can give our audience maybe a little more description of what a showrunner actually does. Maybe talk about what you enjoy about it, maybe some of the challenges you faced.
So for instance, on The Office, it was Greg Daniels who developed the American version of the show. Like if you think about a show like 30 Rock, it's Tina Fey, she is the writer, the creator of the show. The showrunner is the person who's responsible for what the show becomes. They're responsible for the writing side of it. They're on set when things are being shot to make sure everything is done the right way. And then in post-production, they're also there to make sure that things get edited the right way. Whether it's like the sound or the mix or all those things. They're across the process from beginning to end to make sure that the show gets to be what it is. So it's a big job. A lot of showrunners are actually start as writers, but the thing that's different between a writer and a showrunner is that there's so much more people management and there's so many more things you have to do beyond the writing aspect of it to be a good showrunner, right? And so not every great writer is a great showrunner, and sometimes that's a little bit of that's one of the problems we have in our industry sometimes, where there's a writer who's not great with people who becomes a showrunner, and then that show doesn't work as well because that person doesn't know how to give notes. The person doesn't know how to talk to directors. The person doesn't know how to talk to actors. So it's a big job. You literally, it's funny because when I was doing a Nickelodeon show, they asked me to kind of explain showrunners to kids. And I was like, you're kind of like the parent of the TV show. You're the person that that decides when things are going to happen and how things are going to happen. And you get to, all these great kids come on the ride with you.
How do you, like, in your writing process, comedic process, how do you know when something is funny?
Very good question. So comedy, as you know, is subjective, right? And I feel like if it's something that makes me laugh, it'll make someone else laugh. I don't know who, but there's someone out there that's going to laugh. And when I have a writer's room, there are times, and this is funny because there are times when I'm writing something and then a writer pitches a joke and I'm like, that's not so funny to me, but it's funny to that person. I did a show called Shelf, which is kind of like The Office, but set in a library. And one of the writers, this black guy, his name is Brandon Hackett, great guy, so funny, does Second City, improv, all these things. He's like a 6'5" blurred, like just the gayest, nerdiest dude in the world. And he was pitching this joke about, because he has a classics degree. He was pitching this joke about museum thing. And I was like, the Hippocalypse, it was something like that. And I was like, that is the nerdiest joke I've ever heard in my life. I don't fully understand it, but it's going in the script because it's perfect for the character. And also someone's going to be talking about that on Twitter. There's going to be someone that's like, oh, this joke was for me. And that's exactly what happens. And so for me, there's so many things that can be funny. I feel like what happens is when you try to get to a place where you're trying to find something that's funny for everyone, that universal joke, that's when you get caught up in the weeds. Like, how are you going to find something that's like going to work for everybody? When you find that general thing, then you lose the specificity, you lose what's interesting about the joke, you lose all those things. So when I do comedy, I'm not trying to find a joke that works for everybody. If everyone in the room laughs, fantastic. But I'm not trying to find something that works for everybody. I'm trying to find something that's funny to a specific group of people. And then if it works for everyone else, fantastic. Everyone's gonna laugh at the things that they find funny, and I don't think that's the same for everyone that we talk to. So
that's kind of how Moonie and I work. That's our process. It's like if we find it funny and we kind of like, it's very specific and maybe not everyone does, that's fine. It's like, but we have our point of view, and if you're here at this ice cream stand and these are the flavors that we sell, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get chocolate with a lot of nuts. We're crazy.
If you don't like chocolate, go somewhere else and get something else that you like. You don't have to be here.
Yep. Exactly. That's super fascinating. All right, we're going to transition though to our fun and games portion. Anthony, are you ready to play?
I am.
Nice.
I am always ready.
Okay. So I am the moderator / referee if things come to it. But we have our portion of the show called Fun and Games, and we're going to be doing movie trivia. So since you're our Canadian guest, we're bringing in some Canadian
boy, I'm at a disadvantage.
Actors. Oh, come on. Most of them you don't even realize are Canadian, Moonie.
Okay.
So these are people who are quite famous in American cinema as well. All right, Here we go.
All right.
Moonie, you want to go first?
Sure. My answer is Jim Carrey. That's whatever. It's like
smart.
Right? That's what it is. Like
smart.
I do have a Jim Carrey question. Damn it. All right, here's the first question. Which film paired Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy?
One of my favorites, Trading Places.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
I did go to I was in a movie theater once with Dan Aykroyd in Kingston, Ontario, because where Dan Aykroyd grew up is where I went to university. Oh. So one time I went to see a movie and he was just like there with some of his motorcycle buddies. And I was like, wow, Dan Aykroyd's here.
He has motorcycle buddies? That's amazing.
He rides around on motorcycles with his boys. They're just wearing leather, just riding around Kingston, Ontario, doing his thing.
I love it. He's just collecting checks and riding motorcycles.
That's what he did.
Favorite Trading Places scene, anyone?
Merry New Year?
Merry New Year's pretty
Merry
solid.
New Year. Merry New Year.
It's Happy New Year.
There's so many. It's just so good.
There are a lot of
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard to pick one.
All right, Anthony, your back is against the wall
Okay.
here.
Yes.
Here we
All right.
go.
That's
In which film does Jim Carrey have godlike powers?
Oh, that's Bruce Almighty.
Ding, 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 ding. All right, it's a tie.
All right, what's the
tie?
We got a tiebreaker? What are we doing?
Got a tiebreaker. I do have a tiebreaker.
Okay.
We're gonna keep it black, keep it comedic. The first person to answer this correctly wins it all. Okay. The question is, what was the lead character's name in the Steve Harvey Show?
Steve Reynolds.
The Steve Harvey Show?
The Steve
With
Harvey
Cedric
Show. He had a
Entertains-
sitcom. Yes.
Damn.
He was the coach. Come on, think of it. All the kids who say his name.
Al?
No.
Coach Al? I used to watch that show too. Damn.
Me too. Oh God, I'm actually working with something with Wendy Raquel Robinson right now too, so this is even worse.
You gotta bring it up. You gotta bring it up to her. You need to ask.
What did they used to call him?
First name was Steve. The first name was Steve, and the last name was Hightower.
Oh,
Hightower.
He was smart. He did like the Will Smith thing. He used his own name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the same Coach
Mr. Hightower.
Coach Hightower. Yeah, Mr. Hightower. Yep.
Yep.
All right. So we don't have a winner, but that's still cool. We're all winners here.
No?
I'm the winner because I get to hang out. I get to hang out with you guys. So I'm the winner.
Oh, that's so sweet. So sweet. I'm getting a toothache.
Women love compliments.
Shower me, shower me.
I already told you got the best hat in the game right now. That's a nice hat.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It is a very nice hat. All right. Anthony, we asked all our guests this. What is bringing you joy right now? I know you say you laugh a lot, but is there anything particular like in your practice, daily life, weekly, what brings you joy?
I think it's my family brings me joy. I know that's a cop-out answer, but they actually do. Like, especially right now, like, so the kids in particular, like my wife always brings me joy, but that's just the good stuff. My 18-year-old is about to go into university, so seeing them get excited, they got into this. They're going to the same school that I went to, so they're going to take theater. And I actually have friends who are teaching there, and like we went and we saw the space. So they're like walking in my footsteps, and I was like, oh, so that's bringing me some joy because they're getting excited about dorm rooms and looking into that stuff, and they're about to graduate from high school, and so that's great. And then my 11-year-old son, he's getting to that place where like his opinions are so interesting and so funny. Like I'll tell you, this is interesting because I was just talking about this on stage actually. Because the thing about kids that I hate is that they illuminate your hypocrisies, and it's just the worst. So my son's 11. We were talking, as a young black kid, he's born in LA. One of the reasons we left is because, can't trust police officers, Black Lives Matter. He's getting even more into his blackness these days, right? So because there's a bunch of kids, like where we live is kind of like in Toronto is kind of like heavy East Asian, South Asian. So there's a lot of like people from China, people from India. Like, so there's like 5 black kids in his class this year, so which is more than he's had before, and the 5 of them are just like black this, black that, blackity black. But what started happening, and we've talked to him about like, don't ever let anyone call you a monkey, right? That's one of the things we've always talked about, right? We found out him and his friends, a few of the black kids, they're calling each other like, oh, what's up, my monkey? What's up, my monkey?
God.
Okay,
God.
So that was like, you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that.
And the white kids are hearing you too.
Yeah, exactly. So then he's like, okay, we'll stop. But then what? Why is it you can say the N-word? Well, we were taking that one back. He's like, well, can't we take back monkey? I was like, you know what? Just stop using it. I'm going to get back to you.
The rationale. Get back to you.
But I was like, it was fun because I was telling my brother-in-law, he's like, oh, what if they shorten it? What if it's like my monks? Like, he's like, hey, what's up, my monks?
Right, my monks.
Give it a little spin.
Right.
And I was like, oh, God.
I could do a little spin. It's all about context.
Because exactly.
And it's about who's hearing it, too.
Who's hearing it, exactly.
It's like the Chappelle show, right? It's just like, oh, okay.
But so stuff like that's bringing, even though it's a crazy conversation to be having, it's bringing me joy that we're having those conversations, and that it's like, he's at that age now where we can just talk and just be like, just because before it's like, up until that certain age, it's kind of like, hey, take your finger out your nose. Like those are the conversations. But like, that was like, we're getting into like, you should read some Malcolm X. Like, it's kind of like those situations now. So that's what's bringing me joy. My ridiculous family. I hope they never watch this, because then I'll never hear the end of this if they watch this.
Speaking of Malcolm X, I remember reading his autobiography, and I think I was like like in high school, last year of high school or freshman in college. And so I'm like in my militant mode, and I like make a right on like a no turn on red light, and I get pulled over by the police, and my sister's with me and I'm driving, and the cop's like, "Oh my God, you have a suspended license." And I'm like, fuck. Unbeknownst to me, I have a suspended license. He's like, we can just put you in the back of the car, like, or we can put handcuffs on you. And so I'm like in my Malcolm X mode. I was like, put the handcuffs on me. Like, so I was just like, yeah, put the handcuffs on me. I'm giving put me in the back of the paddy wagon. Like, and I was just like, it was so silly, but it was just so funny. That just made me think of that when you mentioned the autobiography. It's such a funny moment in my life, but my little militant Moonie moment.
Yeah, it's good. It's nice to have that
I
militant
do remember
moment.
that because I was that sister that was like, I don't know how to drive. How am I going to get this car home?
We were like broke. I was like, you need to get the bail money out. Like, how are we going to get bail money? Like, this is before Venmo and all this. Yeah.
It was real. It was real. And I know you are a big fan of comedy and laughter. And part of the reason we started this show is that we understood just how powerful laughter is in healing, in the healing process. Has there been a point in your life where you have felt like comedy has saved you?
Yeah, I think it always kind of it always is kind of like a laugh or cry situation, right? Like I always tell people the edge between laughing and crying is so thin. That's why comedy and drama they work so well together when you can do them right, because you can kind of like dance on that line a little bit. I think for me, I would say numerous times that's happened. Like we have two beautiful kids. We have been pregnant 4 times. So we've lost 2, right? And so those times when it's like we lost one before the oldest and then we lost one in between the 2 kids. So the first one we lost, it was crazy because we were told you guys aren't going to get pregnant. It's not going to happen for you. And then we got pregnant and then we lost it. So it was like, that one was like devastating. Then like a year and a half later, we finally had the kid. But during those times, like it's not about like trying to cover up the hurt and the pain. It's about finding ways to take that pain, take that hurt. And if you can find a way to plant some seeds in it and like, grow flowers out of it, right? Like, I think that's kind of the way I think about it, where it's like, I'm not trying to use the comedy to cover it up. I'm trying to use the comedy to help it heal, to help it grow. So just from saying stuff out loud, I think I was able to have those conversations and just like, and comedically speaking, like for me, the thing was like, it's not a, miscarriage is not a funny thing, but like talking about the reactions to it. And for me, it was like a lot of like, as a dad, I was like, my job was I'm a rock for my wife. Like that, I needed to be a rock for my wife. And I couldn't process emotions until I felt like she was ready to move forward. Comedically, it's one of those things where I just became like I'm the man, I'm strong, I'm rock, I will do it. And then must have been like 3 or 4 months later, I was just like sitting somewhere. Then I just started crying. And I was just like, and it was just the craziest thing. It was it was the stupidest thing that made you cry. Just kind of like a butterfly would fly by and you'd be like,
life is so fragile, so precious.
That is the most beautiful butterfly I've ever seen. And it's like, you're not crying about the fucking butterfly. You're crying because you've been holding on to so much shit. But it's just those little wings take it so far. Just like this, but it's just like but it's funny because you're like, it's crazy how the world works. But that's kind of like, so that's one of those times where it's like, you find ways to take the hurt and the pain and all those things and build out of it. And I feel like as a writer, a lot of times I'll turn the things that I'm struggling with or dealing with into scripts, into characters, into a world where I can kind of explore it in a healthy way as a comedian.
In terms of like stand-up, right, and versus being in a writer's room writing for a show or writing screenplays, like is there a different process for you? How are they different, your approach to them?
Like when I started doing stand-up, the thing that was difficult for me is because I came from a theater background. So I'm so used to being someone else on stage. When I started doing stand-up, it took me a little while to find my voice because I was trying to find someone else's voice for the first little while. And once I realized, oh, I'm a funny guy, just talking to people, just be myself, that's when things started to click for me. So that for me is like how stand-up is. Stand-up is I get to be myself and just share some nonsense that's going on in my life with the people that have, that are in the audience. With writing on a TV show or characters or any kind of, like for me, like the thing I'm using my life, my friends' lives, people I'm related to, like finding ways to build characters that feel authentic and real. And if I build it from a real place, they'll do real things, right? Like if start inventing things that just no one can connect with, then I feel like that's when it gets ridiculous. But finding ways to take my personal connections and personal life and putting it into a bunch of different characters, that's kind of like what I'm focusing on when I'm in a writer's room. It's a little bit less about like what I want to get off my chest on a stage and more about like what does this character need. Like I always tell people the scripts when I any good, especially TV, like any good TV script, you have what I refer to as CGO, character, goal, obstacle. So you need a character or characters. They have to have a strong want, something that they need to, they have to do either in that episode or for the season. And your job as a writer is to stop them from getting the thing that they want. And so you create obstacles and depending on how many obstacles you can create, it depends if it's a sketch, if it's a TV show, if it's a movie, like that's kind of how I go about it. So when I'm in the room, I'm thinking about the CGO.
Love that. That's a great tip.
All right. Shall we transition to our final segment? It's called The Dip in the Deep End. Okay, so all of our guests, we asked them these questions, Anthony. The first one being, what do you love the most about comedy writing, the whole creative process?
I think the collaboration for me. Like I think when I get to work with a bunch of people on something that once they realize, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, let's get together on this cool journey and then make it happen. I think it comes from reading The Hobbit when I was a kid. Everyone just gets together. We're on this path. We got to go fight this dragon. We're going to get them. We're going to get them gold coins one way or another. And like that journey to get there is my favorite thing. Like even before we talked today, I was on a call because I'm about to get into a series that I'm running this summer. We're on a call just kind of like with a bunch of other executives and creatives and just talking about the show and what we need and those kinds of things. And just that meeting is like just having a conversation with people, with creatives, and I love that part of it.
Love that. So what advice would you give your younger self, knowing everything that you know now, prior to your embarking on this creative comedic writing journey? Like what advice would you give your younger self?
I've had this question before and I think the answer feels a little bit showy, but I think the answer the thing I would tell myself is like, no, you're right. Do what you're thinking.
Just like, trust your intuition.
Trust it. Yeah, because I think this. I remember one of the first experiences when I was developing my own series. I was at Disney. I was developing a series for Disney XD, and it was my first time doing a show, writing a pilot. And I wrote a pilot, and then I was getting notes from the executive, and I believed what they were saying because they were going to show it to their boss, and their boss was going to decide whether or not we were going to shoot the pilot or not. So I took all the notes. I did everything. A lot of it didn't make sense to me, and I was trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and I just kind of did all the things and just did the best I could. And in the end, they said no because it wasn't the show that they thought that they had bought. And I was like, if I just stuck to my guns, at least they would say no to something that I wanted to do, but they were saying no to something I didn't even want to do. So I always tell people like now, like if you're in a place where you're getting notes, when I get notes, I think about them two ways. Is this a note that makes the show or makes the thing I'm working on more of what I want it to be? If it does, that's a great note. Take the note. Is this note making my show less of what I want it to be? And if that's the case, find out where the note's coming from. Is it from a place where they don't understand what you're trying to do? In which case you can fix that by just clarifying some things in what you're writing. If it's from a place of they just don't like it because they have a preference, cool, then go write your own thing. I don't need to change mine to make you feel better about yourself. I'm going to keep mine the way mine is. So that's kind of like how I deal with notes, but that's kind of what I would tell myself. Like, I think it's just like, believe in yourself. You got it.
Well said. Man.
That's so deep. Moonie used to always say that to me. She's like, it's all about self-belief. I was like, what is this? Like a Disney movie? Like just believe in yourself. But when that light switch goes off and you really do have that fire under you, like, I know my worth. I believe in myself. You're
unstoppable.
You can't do.
You're unstoppable. You're limitless. That was the biggest thing. I always tell you, like, we're like, what changed for you? What changed for me is worthiness. I started believing in myself. I knew that I had something worthwhile to offer, and I was coming from a good place. I want to inspire, motivate, bring joy, laughter, connection to people. How can you lose?
All right. On the flip side of the coin, what pisses you off about comedy and the creative process
or the industry?
I think it's almost kind of a similar thing when people think that they are right about it. I think when people think, oh, there's one way to do it, and they're trying to tell you how to, like, this is such a subjective situation. Like, everyone's got their own style, everyone's got their own thing. And so when people come across, they're like, well, as the monarch of comedy, and I decide what is funny and what's not funny. When people are telling me like something's like not funny, I'm like, okay, it's not funny to you. Cool. And you find it's generational too, right? People are here like, oh, these kids don't understand comedy. It's like, no, what they're doing is not funny to you. What's funny to my 11-year-old son is not funny to me, but I see him watching some stuff and he's cracking his ass up and I'm like, this is nonsense. But he's like, this is the best thing ever. Like, Dad, if you could write Skibbity Toilet into your shows more often, you might get somewhere. When people start acting like they're the be all and end all, they're like, I think comedy judge or whatever it is. Like, I think that's when I get like, nah, man, like it's like Minecraft. It's an open space. We can all play. We can all build.
Yeah, love that. So in terms of like what's next for Anthony, where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now?
I think one of my goals has always been to create a production company where I can like uplift people and just kind of like do interesting shows and that kind of stuff. So I'm kind of like building my brand through my company, Canfro Productions, which is great. So I can see myself in like a place 10 years from now where I've got like, a good, like, a solid bunch of shows and things on the air and kind of like that. And I'm opening up doors for a lot of people. That's kind of where I see myself. That's kind of like what I'm building to. And, so far, so good. I've got some development stuff going on and making some shows, and that's, it's a process, but that's kind of what I'm thinking is where it's going to end up.
Is there anything that's going to be released imminently?
So I'm doing a series right now, and it's not through Canfro, but it's a show that I created. It's called Hate the Player. And that show it's going to be on Anthem Sports and Paramount Canada. I don't know where it's going to be in the States yet, but it's a show about, I don't know if you guys know who Ben Johnson is, but he was a sprinter in the 88 Olympics who got caught with steroids. He beat Carl Lewis in the 88 Olympic Games. And then 2 days later, they found steroids in his system. And then they took the gold and gave it to Carl. So Ben is like a Canadian hero in my eyes. But what happened is as soon as he got caught with the steroids, he went from a Canadian athlete to Jamaican-born Ben Johnson. You know what I mean? Like, so we're doing actually a half-hour comedy about like the scandal and about his life. And it's kind of like I, Tonya meets 30 Rock.
Yes. Anthony, this has been such a pleasure. Can you just let our audience know where they can follow you and on socials and stay connected?
Yes. I'm on Instagram, just AQ Farrell, AQFARRELL. And then the same on the TikTok AQ Farrell. I think that's all I'm on right now.
Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us on our podcast. It's truly been an honor. Thanks again, Anthony.
Totally my pleasure. Love you guys. This has been a lot of fun.
We love you too. Thank you so much for being here.
And as we like to say, the shortest distance between two people is a laugh.
So let's keep laughing, keep connecting, and we'll see you right here on the next episode of A Good Laugh.